Shalom and welcome to Jewish Life, the show about people and issues in Judaism and about some of the secrets you missed out in Hebrew school. Judge Jerome Hornblass, we're very pleased that you agreed to come and share some of your time with us. Thank you, Judge, for being here. First, let me tell the audience that Judge Hornblass is an Orthodox Jew who sits on the Supreme Court in New York State, and he's a great Talmud Chacham, a very learned man in Torah law, and of course as a judge in civil law. Let me ask you, Judge, how is it being an Orthodox Jew in the Supreme Court?
Well, it's very challenging, first of all, to be on the Supreme Court because it's an awesome position, has a lot of power. People's lives are literally in my hands as well as in the hands of other judges. One can abuse that power and be someone that's careless and too carefree and could lose compassion. But on the other hand, someone could be very sober and be able to synthesize justice with compassion. So being a judge is hard by itself. Being an Orthodox Jew is a greater challenge because I believe that really the role of someone committed to Torah is to live in the marketplace, and in my case, the marketplace is the court, and try to be the best one can, to be a light unto the nations, to do justice, to be fair, to be honorable, not to have any fears, or not to curry any favor with anyone. It's an opportunity, really, to bring Torah Judaism to life. In the final analysis, that's really what makes people. How does someone bring his religion to his or her work? Is religion left in the synagogue or another house of worship? Or is religion brought to the family, to the bedroom, and to the marketplace? And that's the real challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. Very often it's not easy. But if we succeed in that, then we're being religious people.
Of course, I wouldn't suggest that you impose Torah, Orthodox Jewish law on your court. That would be a little out of bounds, I believe, wouldn't that?
Well, it'd be out of bounds first in terms of my oath as a judge in the courts, but also in terms of Jewish law, because we have the concept of dina machuta dina, that we have to accept the law of the land.
Right.
And the law of this land is generally a fair, neutral, legal system that's honorable and correct, and there's no reason why someone should go outside the pale of that system. But also, it's not the role, really, of me to foist Torah kind of thinking on the law, although I may say that in American law, to a very great extent, it's been impacted by Torah law. Proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all its inhabitants thereof is on the Liberty Bell, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution very often are pivoted within the concepts of biblical and Torah law. But the real challenge is to take those concepts of the Torah, concepts of honesty, concepts of fairness and compassion and sensitivity, and bring that to my job as a judge.
In your public life, you've been involved in politics, you've been involved with leaders in the Jewish community and the public community. We at this show have discussed the living legacy of the Rebbe and as it goes on at present, and of course as it is inspired by the past. You've met the Rebbe.
Well, not only did I meet the Rebbe, I met the Rebbe on many occasions. I believe the first time I met him was in 1970 at a Farbrengen that was conducted by Rabbi Butman for young people. Thereafter, I had what was called Yechidus, a private audience with the Rebbe in late 1973 in November. And I recall that the meeting went on for about 40 minutes, and his assistants, who were outside, kept on coming into the room to try to interrupt the meeting, and the Rebbe would continue with our discussion. And then when I left the meeting room, there was a phalanx of people that sort of superimposed themselves on me, and they wanted to know, well, what did the Rebbe say? What did you discuss?
He was there for 40 minutes.
Who are you?
Right.
How are you, Roy? How were you privileged to spend all that time with the Rebbe? What did the Rebbe say? What was his conclusions?
What did the Rebbe say?
Well, it was to be in the presence of the Rebbe was to be in the presence of a great man. I've been, frankly, in my capacity in public life, as you said, as a commissioner one of the New York City agencies in the 1970s, and I was president of a group of lawyers called the International Association of Jewish Lawyers. I've met prime ministers, I've met high-level judges and government officials and great rabbis and great priests. There was nothing that I've ever felt that compared to being in the presence of this charismatic, fascinating individual known as the Rebbe, whose name was Menachem Mendel Schneerson, but he was known affectionately by thousands of people as the Rebbe. In that particular meeting, one thing that stands out is I remember him saying, as I embarked upon a new assignment as the chief executive officer of an agency that had the responsibility to develop drug treatment programs in the city and drug rehabilitation programs in the city, I recall him saying, never to be afraid to do things for the Jewish people. And I remember saying to the Rebbe, but most of the problem we have, of course, in the drug area, people who are addicted to narcotics and so on, are not Jews. He said, but you should never forget Jews and never be frightened to do that which is best for the Jewish people, because ultimately you will be praised by others for standing firm and doing what is best for the Jewish people. I always remember that advice, and I try to keep that advice, that I should be sturdy in my Jewish beliefs and never be frightened to reach out to Jews wherever they are. One of the great tragedies for many Jewish people who attain high office is that they bend over backward to do things that really aren't correct and aren't right. What they'll try to do is to demonstrate to the world that they're universalists. They will trample Jewish rights. What the Rebbe said is the opposite. If the more you do for Jewish people, the more you'll be doing for the world. Because if a Jew is secure, the world will be secure. Because the Jew has to bring to the world a certain sense of rightness and compassion and learning and decency. Not that there are others that don't have it. Many, many people have it. But that is one of the major responsibilities to be an Or LaGoyim, to be a light unto the nation.
In this capacity, as you say, you were a commissioner in New York City. That brings us a little closer to home, New York City. The Rebbe's impact on New York City, Crown Heights in particular, what are your feelings about that? How did you see the Rebbe's role in Crown Heights?
Well, the Rebbe was an extraordinary visionary. He had insight into all kinds of persons, black and white, Asian, religious Jew, not so religious Jew, Israelis, Jews from the Soviet Union. And he took a stand when neighborhoods in Brooklyn were disintegrating, and when many people that lived in the East Flatbushers and the Brownsvilles in Brooklyn...
Neighborhoods were like on a roll. They would just move, keep moving. Destroy one, go to the other, destroy the other, and move on.
Yeah. What happened, Rabbi Katzman, is that some people from a minority group would move into a neighborhood. Some hucksters in the real estate business would spread terrible rumors about that situation, would instigate fear. Basically, the fear was that if you don't sell your house now, tomorrow it's going to be valueless. Right. As a result, in droves, people, mainly Jews, left wonderful neighborhoods. And in very short order, perhaps within 10 years, from the 1950s until 1960, in 10 years, neighborhoods that were almost completely Jewish became de-Judaized. Now, Lubavitcher Rebbe felt differently. He said that we're here in Crown Heights. Actually, the Rebbe came here after the war. When he first started, when he started at 770, there was barely 1 million of people at 770. What people fail to understand is that when he came to Crown Heights, there really were no Hasidim. Crown Heights was the quintessential modern Orthodox neighborhood, as was Borough Park in Brooklyn at that time. And the Rebbe began to bring Hasidus and Hasidim into Crown Heights, and he said that we have to stay here. And when
didn't the real estate blockbusters work then? Hey, the Hasidim are coming, we got to run.
But that was the power of the Rebbe. They tried, but that was the exact power of the Rebbe, to tell people to move in. And when modern Orthodox Jews left, Hasidic Jews came in their place, and to make sure that Hasidic Jews moved in. Very few Hasidic families have moved out of Crown Heights over the years. He took a stand, one of the few leaders in this country from any religious group that said, this is our neighborhood. We're not going to explode homes. We're not going to bomb people that sell their homes. We're going to stay here and live side by side with the black community. And that's why one of the projects that I've been engaged in, when I do it, frankly, I do it to a very great extent in memory of the Rebbe. And I started a group called Blacks and Jews in Conversation, where I and black judges work on projects together designed to make society safer, more wholesomer, more decent, where people can get along with each other, where there's hatred is vanquished, and instead of hatred, there's tolerance and understanding and civility.
How do you do that?
I and black judges have programs where we invite children from high schools to come in with work, and we're involved in workshops where judges lead the workshops, and we discuss anti-Semitism and racism. What could they do to eradicate that? We go to law schools, I and the black judges. We go to colleges. Again, workshops and speeches. And the whole idea is to learn to live with each other. In Crown Heights, the first defense forces for American jury, started by Rabbi Schrag, began in the 50s or late 60s, right, to say that, look, we'll have our own police system, but we're going to stay here. The Rebbe started so many projects that were designed to have Jews stay in the neighborhood and live side by side with the black community that's been there for many decades. The problems with Crown Heights began when the Rebbe got sick. Before the Rebbe was sick and he was healthy, there was respect one for another. The problems with Crown Heights also were not caused by people from the black community that lived in Crown Heights. Rather, there were outsiders that were coming in and foaming hatred. I think really when the Rebbe was there all these years, there was not only civility, but people got along, and there was respect for the Rebbe. Beyond that, just the Rebbe's presence, the presence of a great spiritual leader in the community, had the effect, knowingly or unknowingly, of bringing about a calmness, a tranquility.
Two things. Number one, when you're talking about yourself, you're starting off with the children. You started off that what you do with the judges is, you didn't start by you going to law school. You started off, first you go to youngsters, which is, it's important to point that out. It's good to know that there are judges to whom children mean something. And if we're not going to start with the children, there's no point in going to law school if we're not going to start with the youngsters. That's something, you know, I like to commend you.
Well, Rabbi Katzman, what you're saying was the theory of our group called Blacks and Jews in Conversation. We felt, the black judges and myself and the other Jewish judges, that unless we were able to mold and shape children's thoughts, we will not be able to succeed, because once someone becomes an adult, the stereotypes have been formed, stereotypes of hatred and of discrimination and of prejudice are formed. So we must begin with the children. So we have a whole variety of programs to do with the children. Look, the Rebbe too. The Rebbe too had a tremendous emphasis on children. Children loved education. I mean, what the Rebbe did is unheard of in Jewish annals throughout the millennia. He began and developed and continued a network of educational institutions literally throughout the world. And the whole thrust was to open up schools to teach young children. One of the most beautiful things when I used to go to the Fabrengens, the times when the Rebbe would speak at 770 Eastern Parkway, would see the young boys and girls in the balcony, but particularly the young boys, because it was always hard to see the girls, they were blocked. But to see the young boys have eyes riveted to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would be sitting on his table, and there were thousands of young people, very often, as I said, hundreds of young boys, eyes riveted with fascination, with excitement that they were in the presence of someone that was really larger than life. And when the Rebbe would take his little glass and give a l'chaim, everybody just wanted to drink a l'chaim to the Rebbe. Or when the Rebbe would want a tune, he would go It was to get them going. Some of the tunes was Mi Mitzrayim Gialtonu Mi Beis Avodim Pidisonu Mi Mitzrayim, and when he would move forward with his head and jerk his body, the sound would reverberate. And it was the young people that were so excited. And those young people today are adults, still have tremendous memories of the Rebbe. So clearly, without reaching out to young children, society will be doomed.
I remember the Rebbe even when he started his very specific education campaign. The Rebbe said that we're trying to solve public society's ills, building new prisons and all kinds of stuff. The Rebbe said, take this money and put it in education. And you know how many cells you're going to eliminate? You know how many down the road, how many drug centers you're going to avoid? And
well, I remember one of the Rebbe's disciples was Rabbi Jacob J. Hecht, who was also gone to his eternal reward 2 or 3 years before the Rebbe. And he started the National Committee for Further Jewish Education. And one of the things they did was to take children out of public schools and bring them for 2 hours, and release time, it was called, to teach them Jewish topics. So
I used to teach there.
Did you?
Yes, sure. I taught there for quite a few years. There's another point that, going back to this Crown Heights, there's a beautiful mural that has been put up now by the one of the groups that they work black and whites together. They have a mural of peace, and on one side they have a quote from Martin Luther King, and on the other side they have a quote of the Rebbe. It's interesting that the people of Crown Heights do recognize how the Rebbe brought them together and kept them together, and showed really how people can live together.
There's no question about it that in this country we're going to see soon, notwithstanding the people that yell and shout, known as the Farrakhands and the others, we're going to see the renewal of an alliance between Jewish people and black people that began in this country in the Civil Rights Movement. Because basically, there is a common history of suffering. There ought be a certain sense of compassion that both people have, because we both come from slavery. The song that I just recited was Mi Mitzrayim Gialtonu, that God took us out of slavery. Right. And I think we're going to see more and more of it. And I think the fact that the Rebbe has passed does not mean that his influence is not here. Tzaddikim, great righteous people, have their influence continue. And certainly there is no one of this century that has had more disciples than the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
And you out there, audience, you heard it first on this show from the judge. He's not giving up, not on New York, and not on Lubavitch, and not on the good influence that the Rebbe's had. It is very, very good and very inspiring to hear. Let me ask you, Judge, you are a Talmud Chacham, as I said. Well, you're a scholar in Torah, Judaism. Let me ask you, the way the Rebbe was a leader, and so people say it's like unprecedented in history, the way the Rebbe was a leader. But isn't it somewhat cultish, like the Rebbe was like a cult leader, where everybody followed him like an individual? How do you explain that in Torah concepts?
Well, I've heard people say that the Lubavitch movement is a cult and the Rebbe was a cult leader. Nothing can be further from the truth. First, the Rebbe used as his blueprint for leadership the Torah, which comes from God and has been part of the Jewish people for millennia. He didn't want power for power's sake. He was a leader. What makes a leader? A leader is someone that's able to fascinate another individual with that leader's way of life. Not just what he says, but his way of life. And what was the Rebbe's way of life? The Rebbe never left 770, except to go to the cemetery. Why did he go to the cemetery? To pray. He left this world without any kind of material beings. He didn't have a home in Los Angeles or a home in the Hamptons. He didn't go out for vacations. He was working 365 days.
And I'm sure the opportunities were given to him.
Look, I'm sure the Rebbe could have been a very wealthy man, as there are people of the cloth from all religions who become very, very wealthy materially. But he chose to be spiritually wealthy, and people sensed that. And that's why people came from all over the world to get a blessing from him. And that's why people from all over the world would ask the Rebbe, what kind of business do I go into? Do I get married? Where do I live? Do I go to school? What school should I go to? And these were people who were rich and poor, famous and infamous, young and old, that came to him because they sensed that he was a man.
Jew and Gentile.
Jew and Gentile, black and white, because they sensed that he was a man who had leadership qualities, a wisdom, a knowledge, a common sense, a human touch. I know when I would see the Rebbe, although he saw thousands of people, when I would see him, and it wasn't really that often, I perhaps saw him 8 or 10 times in my life, he would always know who I was. He would always know the situation in my family. Interestingly enough, the week before he got his stroke was the last time I saw the Rebbe, at 770, 1992. And I went on a Sunday when he was giving out dollars, as was his tradition.
By the way, where did we ever see any religious leaders giving out money? They always take.
Very true.
That was something that was also symbolic.
Very symbolic. Fresh dollar bills, and women would come, and people would come with an energy, with an excitement that they're going to see the Rebbe. And back to my true story. When I came there, this was the first time in all the years he didn't recognize me, and I was with Rabbi Krinsky at that time, and Rabbi Krinsky said, "This is Judge Hornblass," and he says, "Oh yes," and we spoke for a moment or two, and then when I left, Rabbi Krinsky mentioned to me the Rebbe wasn't feeling well. He was having trouble seeing. At that time he had some cataract problems with his eyes, and I went to the anteroom, and there was a man there. And
what did the Rebbe say to you at the time, after he knew who you were?
Oh, the Rebbe said to me at that time, "Tkiyas Shofar,"
the blowing of the shofar.
Blowing of the shofar. And I didn't know what he meant by that. And I was puzzled by it. Why would he say Tkiyas Shofar? This was in March. Rosh Hashanah was some 6 months before that. Why would he say that? He never said that to me, although my name is Hornblass, but he never said that to me.
Right.
And sure enough, as I was going to an anteroom, there was a man there who recognized me, and he said, he thanked me for blowing the shofar for his mother that previous Rosh Hashanah at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York. Every year on Rosh Hashanah, what I do is I and my 2 sons, we go and we blow the shofar for the sick people. And then I realized what happened. After this man said to me, in response to my question, "Did you tell the Rebbe this?" He says, "Yes, I told him after it happened," that the Rebbe remembered the conversation that he had with this man 6 months before, and that's how he put 2 and 2 together. He says, "Yes, this is Hornblass, the person that blew the shofar." So he had a remarkable memory, remarkable insight. So leadership qualities were able to fascinate people, that memory, and a charm that he had, a tremendous charm. When I went to the Rebbe, I realized that he was always a human being. And I knew that here was a man that didn't have children, though married. I'm sure it's a blessing that he probably would have wanted. I know there was a man, too, that in the final years of his life was engaged in a bitter lawsuit caused by a nephew that broke his heart, but never his spirit. So he suffered the pains in his own personal life. And he also had on his shoulders the burdens and the pains and the sorrows of thousands of people throughout the world.
I do know the Rebbe once responded when he was asked by, I believe, his wife. She asked him why he doesn't sleep more or why he doesn't take a vacation. The Rebbe said, when there are people out there full of pain asking for my advice, I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to go to sleep. This was his attitude.
And I know people would come into his room and meet him at 12, midnight, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They would come from Australia, from Europe, and be there. And I think a man that had those problems was able to be a leader. And he did the unprecedented things, like Moshe Rabbeinu, when he broke the tablets, or when he killed the Egyptian who saw the Egyptian killing the Jew. He did that which was unprecedented, that which is unexpected. And that's why the Rebbe was able to send missionaries or shluchim to Russia when it was full of communism, or able to stay in Crown Heights and develop this whole band of schools.
Actually, your brother went for the Rebbe to Russia at one point. He shared that information with us. Okay, Judge, we got just about a minute left. What would be your closing remark?
Closing remark is, first, I think you deserve a great hearty yashakayach, as we would say, for having this program. This is the medium today. I think you deserve the plaudits of a grateful community. I think Jews should try to get your message, which is essentially that there's a lot of spirituality that could be attained in one's life. We have to try to do it, ascribe to it, work hard at it, and I think the final analysis, we have to bring that spirituality to our relationships with all people. Jews and non-Jew alike.
Definitely with guests like you, it is that much easier to do that. I want to thank you very much for coming here. And to you, our listeners, let us not forget that the Rebbe gave us the message actually the last day before he had the stroke. The Rebbe did tell the reporter that Mashiach is already on the way a very long time ago, and certainly we're going to see the final redemption very, very soon. And in the meantime, we want to wish you the traditional bracha v'atzlocha and all the best.